I want you to listen to this speech. It's actually posted from an Orthodox Jewish rally in 2017 in Brooklyn. I want you to listen to what they are saying about what Zionism is, because I talk about this all the time, and people get really angry about the things that I say, but it's exactly the same thing. I want you to hear it from their mouths. Now, the video, you can find it on YouTube. It's entitled 20,000 Jews Denounce Zionism, and it's put out by a channel called SPSC. I've also posted it in a file that I have on this homepage that's entitled The False Prophet, the Image of the Antichrist, and the Antichrist. And it's just a compilation of different videos that I think are important. Documentaries that I think are important. I want you to listen to what Orthodox Jews are saying about Zionism. Now, since you're not going to be able to see this, I'm going to tell you what the first thing that it says on the screen is, in 2017, 20,000 Orthodox Jews fill a New York basketball stadium in opposition to conscription by the Israeli military, denouncing vile Zionism. Okay, I would be so curious to hear how they feel now that Israel is drafting, or counterfeit Israel is drafting Orthodox Jews to fight this war. Listen to what he says.
Choshev Rabbonim, Rosh Hashivas, Tayra Yidden, members of the press, friends, and fellow protesters. We're assembled here this afternoon because the homeland of the Jewish people is under attack. The homeland of the Jewish people is currently attacked by vile enemies who would see it destroyed. And we're here this evening to speak up for the defense of the homeland and to protect it from those who seek its destruction. The homeland of the Jewish people is the Torah HaKadoshah. Jews have no nationality and no nation state because, unlike all the other ummahs who exist because of a common land, language, or culture, we were a proud people, proud to be the custodian of the eternal book of books, proud to live our lives morally and in dignity and in conformance with the Ratzon Hashem. We had no aspirations to be great warriors, win Nobel Prizes or golden medals. We were proud to be pious, scholarly, and moral. We were proud to be Jews. When we prospered, we were proud, and when we were persecuted, we were proud. Especially when we were persecuted, we were proud, because then we were proud that we were not our persecutors. We were proud that we were the oppressed and not the oppressors. When we were persecuted, we thanked Hashem every day that we were prophets and not persecutors. But there were those who were not proud. There were those who were ashamed. They loved this lifestyle of the anti-Semites. They envied their power, their ruthlessness, their tanks, and their planes. They were ashamed that a Jew was a Torah scholar and not a soldier. They were ashamed that Jews named their children Yisrael Meir, Velvel, or Yoeli, and not Nimrod or Omri. They were ashamed that the Jews would rather celebrate finishing a Masechta and not win a scholar championship, a soccer championship. They were ashamed that the Jews would rather invent a new pshat and a tosfos rather than a new form of martial arts. They looked at the Jew the same way the anti-Semite did, ugly, despicable, weak, and shameful. They looked at the Jew the same way, if we could imagine, the way a gorilla would look at a Jew, pale, weak, and worthless. They were Jewish versions of the anti-Semites. They hated Jewishness, and they hated Jews. They hated Judaism, but they could not live amongst the anti-Semites because the anti-Semites persecuted them too. Poor Koifrim, whatever shall they do? Their solution was Zionism. Its goal, to destroy all that makes the Jews in their eyes so weak, so despised, to destroy all that makes the Jewish people so Jewish. They diagnosed what they called the Jewish problem, and they decided that the source of the problem is Judaism, the religion itself. If only we could get rid of Judaism and be more like our persecutors, our lives would be so much better. But don't believe me about this. Let's give the Zionists a chance to speak for themselves. I quote from one of their founding fathers, a man whose version of Zionism is the dominant one in Israel today, Vladimir Jabotinsky Shein Rishoyim Yirkov. And I quote, "What is a Zionist?" This is what he said. To imagine what a Zionist is, you have to take a Yid and imagine the opposite, the exact opposite of a Yid. A Yid is ugly, sickly, and has no hajras ponim. Therefore, a Zionist has to be beautiful, have massive sore shoulders, vigorous movements, and shades of bright color. Because a Jew is despised, this Hebrew must be charming. Because the Jew is disgusting to everybody. The Hebrew should be lovable. The Jew is submissive. The Hebrew has to know how to command. Jewishness was a destructive doctrine that needed to be eradicated, and the Zionists did their best to eradicate it. They wanted to repeal and replace Judaism, to replace religion with nationalism, to replace the Talmud with tanks, and to change the people of the book to the people of the bomb. So they obtained a state, and they declared this state to be the nation state of the Jewish people. They created a language, Ivrit, and they decided it's the language of the Jewish people. They made an army, and they decided that this army is what defends the Jewish people. But the Jewish people have no state. We have no national language, and there is no army of the Jews. What they created is a statehood, but it doesn't possess any aspect of Jewishness or Judaism in any form or matter. The truth is that the state of Israel has as much to do with Judaism and Jewish identity as China or Korea does. They should stop calling themselves Israel and stop calling themselves a Jewish state, because those are lies. They can call themselves, if they want, Herzlstan, the nation state of the Herzlstanis. Or they can call themselves the Canaanim if they want. They can call themselves whatever they want. But they are not Israel, and they are not the state of the Jews. For over 100 years, this assault on our identity has raged, and the Zionists have used many ways and means to repeal and replace Judaism. But the strongest weapon throughout the years that they've used was indoctrination, propaganda. And the strongest tool of propaganda is their army. The Israeli army is not merely a military organization. Israel set up its military to be an indoctrination camp for Zionist ideology. It's designed to be an educational institution, not merely to teach its recruits how to shoot, but to teach them how to be Zionists. Not merely to show their soldiers how to serve the Zionist country, but how to serve the Zionist gods. Israel's army is a church of Zionism. Ben-Gurion called the Zionist army a melting pot. He said it was designed to, quote, clean, refine, and purify the Jews of their, quote, foreign garbage. It sounds more like a rehab than an army to me, and indeed is a rehab. But what Israel's army wants to rehabilitate us from, we would give our lives to keep. The IDF officers' training manual was found to include lectures on the following topics. 1, what is Judaism? 2, is Judaism a religion, a way of life, or a constitution of a nation? 3, what is the identity of the Jewish people? What business does the military have to teach about religion? Imagine if the Belgian army, for example, were to teach its soldiers about Christianity or Islam, and tell them what your priests taught you about Christianity, what your imams taught you about Islam is all wrong. We in the army know what Christianity is. Who in the world would ever tolerate such a thing in an army? Every day they're beating up Jews. They come with their clenched fists and twisted faces, with their batons, on horseback and on foot. And they beat Jews, and they hurt Jews. You know what? You could beat us, you could hurt us, you could put us in jail. Then you're dealing with Hashem. But when you want to hurt the Torah, we draw a red line in the sand. And if need be, we draw that red line with our own blood. And to the state of Israel, I have advice. You have 2 paths in front of you. You can either rescind all the laws, the loopholes, the terms, and that shtick you have that forces the Jews to go through your indoctrination camps. Your second option is to build more jails, because you're going to need them.
Now I want you to think about the Jews that are going to be saved in the end, in this end time, before that 5th trumpet blows, because no one repents after that. No one returns to God after that. Who are the Jews who are going to be saved? The ones standing up and saying does not represent us? What's going on in the Middle East in Zionism is not Judaism. You heard it from their mouths. The language they made up, the gematria, the nonsense that they have added to the scroll, the militia that they call Judaism. Those are not Jews. I want you to think about Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, where it says, I'm going to make those who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan, bow down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. I want you to think about Revelation 13, the image of the Antichrist that's been set up by the false prophet of the United States and given breath. That image that counterfeit Christianity is worshiping. That all of the inhabitants of the earth, all whose names have not been written in the Lamb's Book of Life, are going to worship. I told you several weeks back, probably a couple months ago now, that God spoke to me about India prostituting itself to Israel. You don't have to be religious in order to worship this counterfeit Israel. All of America is doing it. You don't have to be religious in America to go along with this narrative of Israel being in the right and everyone else being a terrorist. Look at the people who are being jailed for speaking out. Even not speaking necessarily against Israel, but speaking out in solidarity, in support with Palestinians. People who, by the way, the war didn't start on October 8th. There has been a war on Gaza, on Palestine, for 70 years. This is not Judaism. You've been taught to test the spirit and discern the fruit. Murder is not Judaism. You cannot murder. It's against the law. So how then do you turn Judaism into a militia that goes to war and murders? And not only murders, but steals people's land. You know, the word talks about other pagan nations being shocked at the lewd conduct of those who were called to God. Shocked at the lewd conduct of those who were called to God. And says you haven't even conformed to the other nations around you. They're shocked by you. So not only do they murder, but they steal land. They drive women from their pleasant homes, as the word says. They torture little children. I mean, I've seen these videos of these poor little kids who are being terrorized by these Israeli soldiers. What do they have against little children? They're sodomizing, raping, and torturing prisoners. How can anyone call this a holy war? What is a holy war? What is that? There is no such thing as a holy war. God says don't murder. And Christ said, turn the other cheek, pray for your enemies, give to those who ask of you. If a person tries to sue you, give him your cloak too. How does this fit with what God has commanded? How is this being branded as Judaism or Christianity? You heard it yourself. You heard the history from Jews themselves. They are denouncing these liars who call themselves Jews. Now you got to discern it with God.